My name's Christy Lara, and I work elections here in Texas. I'm a huge fan of Progress Texas. I love that it brings amazing progressives together. We are part of the Texas Progressive Caucus, and we just consider you guys part of our family. You guys get the good word out about all the amazing things happening in Texas, and we want to continue that now through 2026.
It's Wednesday, April 1st, 2026, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier here at Progress Texas. We've built a statewide audience. We reach millions of Texans monthly, and that's thanks to folks like you who invest in independent progressive media by Texans for Texans. Thanks huge to Doug Beaton, Edith Frost, and Marvin Hecker for their ongoing sustaining support. Thanks to all three of you. You know, when Donald Trump does something insane, it must be comforting for some folks to be able to dismiss it as just another Tuesday at the White House, that the checks and balances will take care of it, that the courts will take care of it, that the Constitution will take care of it. All ever more weak and misguided attempts at self-comfort, I know, but in Texas, we're basically Trump's political laboratory, given that our state government, from Governor Greg Abbott on down the list, are full lockstep agents of the Trump cult. So this news that Donald Trump has basically pulled the plug on mail-in voting does indeed matter to people who live in red states like Texas. VoteBeat says Trump issued a second executive order on elections yesterday titled Ensuring Citizenship Verification and Integrity in Federal Elections, granting the U.S. Postal Service oversight of mail-in voting by allowing states to submit lists of voters slated to receive ballots 60 days before an election, and directing USPS to only deliver ballots to voters on that list. This order also directs the Department of Homeland Security and the Social Security Administration to share federal databases with state officials to verify adult citizenship status, all under threat of withholding federal funding for states who fail to comply, and a threat against individual officials in charge of sending out those mail-in ballots. Court challenges against this order are guaranteed and will happen fast. Danielle Lang of the Campaign Legal Center notes that Article 1 of the Constitution gives election authority to the states and to Congress, not to the president. And legal scholar Rick Hansen says the U.S. Postal Service and DHS lack the manpower or infrastructure to implement these changes before the November midterm election arrives, not to mention that the order contradicts many existing state laws regarding late ballot requests. State officials in Arizona, Colorado, and Wisconsin have already announced plans to sue over the obvious risk of widespread disenfranchisement of voters. This is a direct attempt by Donald Trump, who just voted by mail himself the other day, by the way, to grab oversight of the mail-in voting process despite repeated judicial rulings that have blocked his previous efforts to rewrite election laws. In Texas, however, he'll find no resistance to this order. Court action notwithstanding, look for Texas election officials to fall in line. In short, if you were thinking about voting by mail in November, now's the time to start working on alternative plans. After all, Governor Abbott, by the looks of a 2-page letter sent out to his mailing list, is just as desperate as Donald Trump is at this point. See the Substack going out with today's Daily Dispatch for screen grabs of last week's plea by our governor to re-energize Republican voters, expressing alarm that Democratic turnout significantly outpaced Republican turnout last month, writing, quote, "The Democrats are starting with a huge lead. We can't let these socialists take our Texas away from us. The Democrats just turned out more voters than Republicans in a Texas election," unquote. Greg is nervous. And there's no doubt that the Texas GOP in general is currently freaking fully out, which again is perhaps a loose explanation for the otherwise inexplicable flood of Islamophobia that's come to dominate Republican messaging. Hating on Hispanics apparently went out of style, and they got to have somebody to hate. Sanford Nowland sums that up nicely in the San Antonio Current by issuing an urgent ass clown alert, noting that while the Republican-dominated Texas legislature is known for political theater, its recent wild-eyed panic over Sharia law stands out as a particularly unnecessary and stupid stunt. Republican leaders, including House Speaker Dustin Burrows and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, have prioritized preventing Sharia law for the upcoming 2027 legislative session, while State Representative Brent Money has spearheaded a Sharia-free Texas caucus, which has already attracted over 40 Republican members eager to pile on. The funny part is This is happening in spite of the fact that there is no actual threat of Islamic law supplanting the U.S. legal system. The Establishment Clause of the Constitution strictly prohibits the substitution of constitutional law with religious doctrine. All of this ugly, rather, is a cynical and desperate attempt to stoke fear for political gain via the targeting of a religious minority of 2% here in Texas. Much less funny is the time and effort being spent on a fictional problem while very real challenges face Texas. Our underfunded schools, our sky-high rates of uninsured families, our deplorable foster care system, and yes, our grocery prices and utility bills that get more and more unbelievable each passing week. It seems a safe bet that these hateful messages against Muslims will likely find most resonance within the gilded halls of Texas's mega churches, but there remains at least a token degree of legal restraint upon their political power. Eleanor Klibanoff of the Texas Tribune says a federal judge in Tyler dismissed a lawsuit yesterday aimed at allowing churches to endorse political candidates without losing their tax-exempt status. The target was the 1954 Johnson Amendment, these churches arguing that ban on pulpit electioneering violates their First Amendment rights. And the ruling against them is being celebrated by advocates for the separation of church and state who argue that exempting houses of worship from rules that apply to other nonprofits would be unfair. Of course, let's not kid ourselves here, especially in Texas and especially under Trump. The IRS has largely stopped even pretending to enforce this restriction. So it looks like for now, Texas megachurches will basically keep doing what they've been doing, which is whatever they want. Speaking of getting away with it, we note that Gateway Church pastor and Trump spiritual guru Robert Morris is already out of jail. Kelly Dearmore at the Dallas Observer says Morris has been released from an Oklahoma prison after serving a 6-month sentence for the sexual abuse as a child of Cindy Clemishire, who went public back in 2024. A rougher row ahead, it would appear, for another Texas church child abuser, Caitlin Rooney, at KXAN TV in Austin, says Luke Cunningham, a 43-year-old former youth pastor, was sentenced to 40 years in prison in a Lubbock courtroom yesterday after pleading guilty to 2 counts of sexual assault of a child and bigamy. New details in the case show that Cunningham, after being jailed, plotted to have a fellow inmate murder one of his victims, providing detailed plans to make the killing look like a suicide, the victim's home layout, workplace, and vehicle information. That murder-for-hire plot is likely to lead to further charges. Prosecutors are calling the Cunningham case one of the most heinous examples of church-related predatory behavior they've ever seen, including manipulation of his child victims by tying their compliance and silence to the spiritual salvation of their families. This guy was in action at multiple churches in Lubbock, Fort Worth, and Granbury dating back to 2013. Sorry to wrap on such a gross note today, but the message this morning is the same as it always is. Texas is way overdue for a change of guard and deserves a better future than the present we face after decades of grift, greed, and wannabe theocracy under Republican control. Whatever you're doing to make a difference, it's time to step it up. And key to that is to get excited and prepared when it comes time to vote. And there happen to be not one but 2 Texas elections approaching next month. Municipal city level elections on May 2nd and the statewide primary runoffs on May 26th. Your last day to be registered for the first of those, the municipal elections, is tomorrow, Thursday, April 2nd, and early voting in that election will start on April 20th. As for the midterm runoffs, registration deadline there is April 27th, and early voting in the runoff will start on May 18th. Houston listeners, the next episode of our In Progress Roundtable show will come to you on the radio in the middle of a brand new Thursday afternoon block of progressive political programming at 6:30 p.m. every Thursday evening on KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston, after the Progressive Forum and before the midterm show with Ernest Wittring. And it runs a second time every Sunday morning at 11 on KPFT FM HD2. With your support, we hope to expand our radio footprint beyond Houston to the top 5 Texas media markets this year. Click the link in the show notes to make your tax-deductible donation to help us reach new audiences via Texas radio. And here at Progress Texas, we're getting ready for our 16th anniversary celebration happening in Dallas, with drinks, light bites, and a fun review of the highlights of our successes over the last few years. Save the date for that. That's Tuesday, June 16th. And see the link in the show notes to reserve your spot at our shindig in Dallas. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Our mission at Progress Texas is to improve and save Texans' lives by acting on our shared, bold, progressive values. And that starts with countering the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine. Progress Texas is an independent, nonprofit, rapid response media organization. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media in action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.